Am I coming out? There we go. Excellent. Hey folks, I'm going to go ahead and get started. But before I do, I just wanted to share. I came in here earlier, and we're having a HackerCon at a bar full of video games. I stopped at the bar upstairs to get a free beer, which is Actual Brewing. Again, thanks to the Hardbit guys. I'm a Columbus guy, so very appreciative of that. And as I stepped up to the bar, the bartender was reading Preacher. I'm in the right place today. This is very comfortable for me. This is home. Good to go? All right. So what I wanted to share with you guys today is something I put together over the 15-some years that I've been doing what I'm doing. In my day-to-day, I went to school to be a music teacher, ended up in computers because I wanted to make money. I'm married, I have kids, I'm trying to take care of people at home. But I've still got kind of this idealistic passion that I think we all bring to the table. I've been a security admin, I've been a hacker, I've been a suit. So, you know, whether that's Renaissance man or multiple personality disorder, choose your poison. But my job has been try to be all these things. And what I found, echoing what Jack said upstairs this morning, just getting back to the basics and doing some common sense security is going to make change, right? That's how we're going to do what we do. So normally I rant for about an hour, but I'm going to move quick here through the half hour. We have two jobs as security people. We're trying to keep bad things from happening, and when bad things do happen, because it's inevitable, we try to minimize the damage, minimize the impact. If we keep that in mind, if we keep those two goals in mind, it helps us be more successful and do what we're trying to do as security professionals. Sometimes we get so caught up in the details and the tech and the controls and everything has to be 100% correct. We do more damage to the business than an actual attacker. If we do a vulnerability scan that takes a system offline, guilty. I once, in a retail job, took the entire store's network out for about 15 minutes. Now, shame on me for scanning 2 load balance switches at the same time. Shame on the network team for using equipment that was so archaic that it could get knocked over with a vulnerability scanner. Long story short, they got new equipment about 3 months later. But we are trying to figure out how to help the business do what they're trying to do. And that's why I put this together. When we're out talking to people, they know their business. They know how they do what they do. They know what the corporate culture is like. They know what the budget, the team, they know what they can get away with. Risk appetite, right? How many people are from a risk-averse organization? We're not even trying that, right? So what are you? Finance, insurance, public utilities? I'm seeing the nod to finance. How many people work in retail? Right? What did Home Depot say when they got hacked? Do you see this in the Bloomberg article? We sell hammers, right? That's what they were telling the security people. Why do we have to worry about this stuff? We have to move fast. We have to get customers. Retail organizations, in my experience, tend to be a little more risk accepting. But it's the company culture. It's how you do your day-to-day. It's how much money you have, how you do what the customers expect, and then how you stand out among the competitors. You know this about your company, and you need to put all the security talk in that context. Crazy thing is it doesn't matter if you're a large multinational corporation, global footprint, people all over the world speaking 20 different languages, or if you're a mom and pop shop with 2 people that don't even have a brick and mortar, it's the same thing. You know your business, and there's a certain core set of security controls, I think, that apply. This isn't just important for these businesses to do what they do. This is critical to our national economy. If you go out to SBA.gov and poke around at the numbers, small businesses drive what we do. We are at a small business right now, right? That's how we're doing what we're doing today. It keeps people employed. It keeps money flowing. It keeps us moving forward as a whole. But more importantly, everybody you talk to, whether it's the people you work with in your company, whether it's the people you're talking to over the phone, asking them why they're not patching Poodle, even though we knew about it, 6-8 months ago now, and we're still seeing it out on the internet. Why aren't you fixing that? People go home to their kids. People go home to husbands, wives, boyfriends, girlfriends, roommates, dogs, cats. We have a turtle, right? You go home and you do things that are not security, and that's true for everything you talk to. So I also want us to come at this with a common sense approach, knowing that we're not talking to statistics. We're talking to real people. When we're telling somebody you have to do this, small business, you have to comply with our 200-plus question set if you want to do business with us. We're telling them they're going to be giving up their weekends and evenings that they would have with doing the things they want to do, all for the sake of us checking a checkbox. So I want us to pull back from that, and I want us to do the things that matter. I want us to start making changes, but security is not one size fits all. We cannot take that ISO-based question set and flip it out to every vendor we work with and expect them to all understand even half the questions that we're asking. It's got to be appropriate for the different organizations, but we don't have that option thanks to things like PCI and FSMA. If we look at a retail organization, right, you're sharing credit card information with people, you have rules in PCI that say if you want to be PCI compliant the next time the QSA rolls in, you have to have language in your contracts that all the people you're sharing credit card data with are PCI compliant. PCI 3.0 has 228 individual controls. That's the full standard, right? You can get the different standards. Or if I'm in the NIST space, FSMA has 204. The SANS, 20 critical controls. I love the SANS organization. I think they do some great stuff. That is the most deceptive name of anything I've seen in the industry. Just do these 20 things, which is really almost 200 things I need you to do to comply. I was working for a state client here in Ohio, and they put together a control set for folks, and they based it on the SANS Top 20. And my job was to make sure these people were doing what they were expected to do. And I'd get on the phone, and one of the questions I would ask people was, what's your risk management plan? And I kid you not, I had one guy tell me, well, we back up our data. Okay, but what's your risk management plan? Oh, we just do backups. And to him, the concept of security was backups. There was no concept of social engineering. There was no concept of web application attacks. There was no concept of lost or stolen anything. It was just, if I lose data, I need to put it back, because as a small business owner, that's security to me. If I can keep doing what I'm doing by putting that data back, I'm covered, right? So what I found is we need to educate. And fortunately, for large organizations, there's groups like the Unified Compliance Framework. Anybody heard of these? Right? You said, well, yeah, the policy, right? You probably spent a lot of time talking to them. Last time I checked, there were over 650 authorities that they keep track of. Now, PCI is an authority. ISO 27002 is an authority. Finland Data Protectorate is an authority, right? So what they do is they look at all these different rules that we have to follow for security all over the world, and they try to map them together using all their different citations, right? The requirements, they call it citations. They have over 25,000 citations that they map back to 3,500 controls. Folks, this is maddening for large companies with full security teams. To go to a small mom and pop shop, it's idiotic to expect them to be able to do any of this. And it's not just the complexity, but it's the cost. If you're a small business, you're shelling out a $1,000 a year for somebody to tell you all these rules you have to comply with that you don't understand and that may not even apply to your organization. You're only doing it to secure the business of this big company. And I can tell you from my consulting days, I spoke with a lot of small shops. They said, Jerod, we don't know what this means. But we do know that if we say no to this, we risk losing that business. And if we lose that business, we go belly up. And if you are expecting that all your small parties are honestly and accurately answering, all your third parties, answering these questionnaires, you're lying to yourself. We need to push out some sort of education. We need to show them how to answer the questions. And we need to get back to a small question set that makes sense. Because right now, this is where they are, right? Their heads are ready to pop at these questions. So let's get a little perspective. Let me jump to this. Has anybody ever seen this before? I hope this isn't new here today, right? Confidentiality, integrity, availability. If we're keeping the secret secret, if we're protecting systems and applications and data from unauthorized changes, and if the systems are always there when users need them, that is generally accepted as a concept of security. I don't need to go through the entire ISO 27002 control set when I'm talking to a business owner. But if I use those three explanations, secret, secret, no unauthorized changes, and always online, they get that, right? That makes sense to them, even if they have never worked in a computer-related role. Is there any tabletop gamers here? Please say yes. Does anybody play Carcassonne? All right, so here's your assignment. Go to your local comic shop or game shop and check out the tile-based game Carcassonne. It's a riot.
1 second.
Absolutely.
Can you make an announcement? Is there anybody who has parked a black van in the back?
Black van in the back?
Because the taco truck can't park.
Oh, food.
If there's a black van, that van doesn't move.
Yeah, if
so
anybody...
If anyone knows anyone that has a black van?
Please have them move.
Yeah.
Please, thank you. Carcassonne is, the game is named after a countryside in France, and specifically after this castle. And the whole game concept is that you build out this French countryside, and my 15-year-old will never play this game with me again because I pissed him off so bad. I'm highly competitive. I don't let my kids win. I don't know what that says about me as a dad. But when we talk about security from that castle perspective, that's another analogy people get, right? We don't just have one control. Backups are not the only thing we have to do for security. We have layers. We have outer walls. We have inner walls. We have guards. So that concept of defense in depth, whether you buy it or not, it makes sense to people outside of the industry. So if you talk about the need for backups are okay, but what are you doing around protecting admin rights? And what are you doing about looking for technical vulnerabilities that attackers might take advantage of? You can start to make some headway. The risk here of me putting this out and saying, guys, this is another thing, is that we now have another standard comply. I don't want you to do that. This is not in addition to PCI or HIPAA or any other 3-letter, 4-letter acronym that you have to address. This is intended to be to help you get a realistic understanding of how secure the people are that we are working with. And, crazy thing, look at inside. Look at your own organization. What I've got, skip that, a simple approach. I've got 7 areas that I think we have to protect. And I think that if we do a good job of protecting these 7 areas, the likelihood of something bad happening and the impact when it does, they both go way down, right? This is the Pareto principle, that 80-20 rule. I'm not trying to fix everything. I'm just trying to reduce that risk to a point that it's manageable and acceptable and that we can work with it. 7 areas that I have are going to make sense to anybody who's worked in IT for even 10 minutes. We have to protect our applications. We have to protect our endpoints, our networks, our servers, our data, our physical locations, which always makes us uncomfortable, right? Put me behind a laptop, let me hack away, I'm cool. Make me go out and talk to people, that's uncomfortable. But we have to look at our physical locations and we have to protect our people. I don't have this list as an order priority. That's just the order they came to in as I'm looking at from a pen tester perspective, outside in. But you can weight them however you want. My takeaway here is take a look at these 7 areas, and there should be 3 things that you consider your top 3 for each of these areas. And what you come up with is a list of 21 questions that you can share internally, that you can flip to third parties, that they should be able to answer within an hour. Over their lunch, they can sit down and go through those 21 questions and say, yes, we're doing that, and no, we're not. And if you get to the end of that 21 questions and you have any no's, stop right there. If you spend any more time asking them questions about whether or not they have a robust encryption key management solution that rotates the keys every 90 days, you're wasting everybody's time. They don't need it, you don't need it. Start with the 21 questions, get to the end of that list, and that's going to tell you right away where folks stand, both the companies that you rely on to do your business and then also internally, how well you're doing the things that really matter. Quick point here. I'm not just up here spouting, we should go do this. It is very important for me that we have something when we come to events like this that we can take away. I've already put together the questionnaire for you that you can go download and start using right away. I shared this at Bsides Columbus earlier this year, and I had a guy in Cincy the very next day using this, and he came back and he's like, Jerod, thank you. This helped me get the questions in front of them I needed to. And I'd love, number one, to see more people use this and come back to me and say, Jerod, you're full of shit. This doesn't work. Because if it doesn't work, I want to know so I can help make it better. I can continue to tweak it. It's not just, though, give me the list of yes or no questions, but it's also got guidance. Because if we are not teaching these small businesses how to do what we need them to do, it's not going to happen. We're the ones with the knowledge. They're the ones who need it. It may take a little more time or effort on our part, but the crazy thing is a lot of the things that we need to teach and share are already available for free, and we just need to point them in the right direction. First example, protecting your applications. 3 questions I would ask, this applies to web and mobile, are your developers writing secure code? Do you have your application security requirements documented somewhere, like the project plans, or please do this in your third-party contracts? If you are going to any dev shop outside of your company and saying, write a mobile app for us, don't expect them to do security, folks. In a lot of cases, they have not been asked by anybody to do it, and it's just extra time on their project, right? They're not going to do that for free, so they want somebody to ask. And then, are you actually testing your apps to see whether or not there are vulnerabilities? Those are my top 3 questions. If you ask those 3 questions of any small business owner, keeping it at a high level, they should know right away, yes or no. You'll notice here, I'm not saying, do the developers, have they been trained against the SWOT checklist from SANS? Or have you tested for SQL injection and command injection? And I'm not going into the OWASP testing guide here. I'm not going into the SANS checklist. I'm just saying, secure code, yes or no? Are you asking for it? Because if they give us a no, now we know where we have to focus. Now where we know where we need to work. Protecting our endpoints, mobile devices, workstations, kiosks. If you've got any brick and mortar where you have those machines that anybody can come up and use, right? That connection out to the internet terrifies me. And then also removable media. It is ridiculously cheap to go, what's a Micro Center, Best Buy? What's a 2 terabyte, 3 terabyte drive cost now? Well, let me ask it this way. Can companies take a credit card in and buy a 3 terabyte flash drive or a 3 terabyte drive with no significant impact to the budget? If the answer is yes, then there's a chance that somebody's got one that they've connected to your systems that are putting sensitive data on. So we're trying to keep track of all our endpoints. So how do we do it? If it's got an operating system, it's got anti-malware, right? Or what Jack was, endpoint security. Especially important for Android devices. I'm thrilled that Google Play finally has some sort of vetting. Unfortunately, it took them a long time to put that in place, so we've had a lot of issues with malware in the Google Play Store. Antivirus isn't going to fix everything, but it's going to catch the old stuff. I was working an incident for a law firm that was hit with CryptoLocker, and when they came in and they cleaned up the incident, and then they wanted us to take a look at the logs. And in the logs, I found a Perl script, like a reference to an IP and a Perl script that I could go in and look at. And I thought, well, I've written some Perl. I'll go take a look. I want to see what this does. And as I'm looking in the Perl script, there's comments in the code. Well, that's very considerate for the attackers to comment their code to make it more efficient for them to attack us. So I thought, well, I'll just plug some of these comments in Google and see if anybody's been talking about this. Folks, I found those comments showing up on pages in Google, cache search results, 6 and 7 years old. So when we look at anti-malware, it's not always the new sexy exploit that we're worried about. Sometimes attackers are using stuff that to us might seem archaic, because if they find somebody who doesn't have anti-malware, it's going to work. So anti-malware, limit who has local admin, and then patch all the things. Not just operating systems, but also applications. If we're doing those 3 things, we're reducing that risk. Protecting the network, wired, wireless, cloud. Hate the term, but it's important for this one. And then remote access, VPN. If you are working with a third party, one of the first questions you should be asking them is, do you have your own servers in-house, or are you using a third-party provider to host your servers? Are you using platform as a service or software as a service? And chances are you're going to hear a yes to that. When you start asking them about who's securing that environment, You're going to find a lot of assumptions. Oh, that's all right. The provider takes care of that for me. Get on the phone with the provider. You know what? We offer that as a service, but they didn't subscribe to that. So we are not watching their logs. We are not making those changes. So we need to look at all of these networks. If you can segment your networks, my kids have all been to the orthodontist. Well, my oldest two, my daughter hasn't been yet. And I was on the wireless network at the ortho on the first consult. And curious, I used Fing. You guys use Fing? Anybody? Mobile app lets you profile the network. So I start poking around. I found they had the billing and patient system on the public Wi-Fi. That was named braces because they didn't want any mistakes as to whose wireless network you were connected to. They had no idea that they needed to separate those back office systems with sensitive data, my bank account information, that they needed to keep that off of their unencrypted public wireless. So ask questions about network segmentation, about using strong encryption for data in motion. Who uses Qualys SSL Labs? Bake that into every single conversation you have with a third party. If you have a third party who has a website that is supposed to be encrypted, point the SSL Labs tool at it and ask them what their SSL cert looks like, because you'll turn up issues with patch management. You'll turn up issues related to how they do vulnerability management as a whole. And the person who's answering your questionnaire might say, yeah, we patch everything except our internet-facing systems that all of our customers use. So strong encryption for data in motion. And then, multi-factor for remote access. This is commonplace for people who are using Amazon Web Services. Multi-factor is becoming more accepted. We're not doing it across the board yet, but those are my 3 questions on the network level. How do we protect all of our servers? Following up on what Zach and Wayne were talking about, some hardening process, right? Turn off stuff you don't need before you stand it up. Manage and monitor your admin accounts. How many pen testers do we have here? Any pen testers? What's your target when you're doing a pen test, Andy? Say domain admin. Domain admin, yeah. When I talk to pen testers, once I get on the inside, I want domain admin. So if you see a new domain admin account created, if you see admin accounts doing something outside of the norm, that's a great indicator of compromise. So ask them, or if they're watching their admin accounts, and then are they scanning and patching their servers on a regular basis? If you have some internal policy, you can say, we scan and patch our servers monthly. If you're going to do business with us, you have to do it monthly. We only do it every 3 months. Well, I appreciate that, but if you've got some automated process that's doing it 3 months, you can bump it up to every month. How do we protect our data at rest and data in motion? Principle of least privilege. What's the OPM? Anybody read up on the OPM hack, Office of Personnel Management? How did it happen? What was some of the revelations? Sorry? Yeah. They had developers or contractors from China and Argentina that had full access to every row in every database, period, for a year. And they're surprised that they had an incident, right? So if you're not asking these questions, even large federal organizations can miss some of the basic security principles. So least privilege, which again, that's our language. You might have to explain what that means to a business owner, but people only have access to what they need to do their jobs. Create and test backups of critical data. It's one thing to say, I'm backing everything up, but if nobody's actually testing those backups, boy, is that going to suck when something bad happens. I was on GoDaddy for years with one of my writing and filmmaking websites, and I've been using a Dropbox backup app that would take that, all the scripts and all the blog posts and just write them out to Dropbox. It was working like a charm. GoDaddy broke some things, and I decided to go ahead and move to a different hosting provider. Tried to restore my backups. Turns out, my lack of testing, that's on me, folks. I cannot get my site back online because even though it was backing everything up, there's no clean, simple way to restore those backups. So I thought that things are being backed up, and I'm a security guy. I do this all the time. Fortunately, it wasn't business critical data, but make sure they're testing. And then encrypting all of the restricted data at rest. It's important that you use a term like restricted or private or sensitive. Because as soon as you say, are you encrypting all of your restricted data at rest? They're going to come back and say, what do you mean by restricted data? Good. So how do you classify data internally? Do you treat everything the same? Or are the credit cards that we're sending your way, or the socials of the people that you're collecting, are you treating that data with more care, right, with more control. Those are the 3 questions I put here. Physical locations. Headquarters tend to be pretty well locked down, but I mean, here in Ohio, right, as soon as you get outside of Columbus, Cincy, or Cleveland, and you get to a branch office in a small town, I can tell you as somebody who grew up in a small town who did not lock my house or my cars at all until we were I was probably 16, 17. Thank you. Before I even thought that I had to lock doors at night because I lived next door to my grandma and then my aunt was further down the road. And what if they needed to come by and get something? I mean, I could give them a key, but I could just leave the door unlocked to make it easy for everybody. That's small town mentality. And if you get outside of the big city, right, and you get to one of the smaller areas, you're going to find that, and I've seen this on physical pen tests, you can walk all the way back into the manager's office and sit down and start using their computer. So all the controls that we think we have in place at headquarters, sometimes we miss. So restrict access to sensitive locations. Again, this is a question. Ask the people to explain to you, are you doing this? And if so, how are you doing it? Keep your computing equipment in locked rooms. The bathroom is not a good place for a network switch. Now, physically, I've seen this, guys. I've seen from a floor layout standpoint, it may make sense to put it there operationally, but if somebody can walk in and access it without a lock or key, that's bad. And then require, or at the very least, encourage employees to monitor visitors and challenge strangers. If you see somebody walking around who you don't recognize, you don't have to go say, you don't belong here. Come on, security, we're taking you somewhere. If any of you are as non-confrontational as some of the folks I've worked with, I'm comfortable with confrontation. I found that not everybody is. Another approach might be, hey, it looks like you're trying to find somebody. Can I help you? Everybody in your company will be able to do that. They won't necessarily challenge people, but they will be okay to ask. So ask these 3 questions about whether or not they're doing that at the location level. And then the most important, protecting the people. I can clean up antivirus, right, or a malware incident, or I can make network changes to address a DDoS attack. But if somebody gets hurt, you can't undo that, folks. You can't clean up from that. What's in scope for protecting the people? Anybody who works for the company and with the company. So it's especially important if we have third parties who are using third parties, that we're asking them, are you applying these same rules to all the people that you employ? The number one thing that we should be asking in the protecting the people, do your people know how to identify and respond to security incidents? It's one thing to say, hey, I got a phishing message trying to trick me into giving my password. Let me go to that website and fill out some bogus information just to show them I'm smarter than them. Okay, they've identified the incident, but do they know you're never supposed to engage a social engineer? When I was doing social engineering tests, those were my favorite people. Because when you get somebody arrogant enough to think they know more than you, and you can work them, you can have a lot of fun. So identify and respond to security incidents. Background checks as needed. We do background checks for people when they hire. Well, great. That means when they started working for you, they were smart enough to not get caught. Are you doing background checks over time? What about how many people do credit checks? Yeah, if you find somebody who's in a financially compromised situation, they are more likely to commit fraud or some action that would have a negative impact. That's never going to show up on a background check, folks. So ask them what they're doing there, and then are we providing training on internal policy standards and procedures? If you're writing down what you need to do, great. If you're not telling people about it and making sure they understand how you as a company operate, they may be operating under some entirely different understanding or principles, especially depending on where they came from. The end result is this short, simple question set that's accessible to both tech and non-tech people. And if you can't answer yes to everything, stop there, because the no's are where you need to focus. And just to reiterate, this isn't about compliance. I want to help business owners understand what security is and how to do it. Let me jump out here. And it's on my laptop, so you can't see it. commonsenseframework.org. That's my website. This is that spreadsheet that I have out there. 4 tabs. The last tab, tool data, if you touch it, you break stuff, but it's not complicated. Tab 1 is instructions. You can take this and send it to them and say, look at tab 1. I need you to go through all of these things. I need you to assess your current state, right? I want to know what controls you already have in place. Let's have an open, honest conversation about your risk appetite. How much risk are you willing to accept? And then let's set a realistic goal for how secure you want to be or need to be. And then determine how much money you're going to spend. Start looking into solutions, and then we'll put missing controls in place. Schedule recurring tests to make sure those controls are working. That's where pen tests come in. Measure the effectiveness of your controls, because metrics, right? We can't fix it if we're not tracking it. And then repeat the process. If they go through those steps over time through these 21 questions, once they get to that yes on all 21, you have a higher level of assurance that something bad isn't going to happen at them that's going to come back on you. So the way it's set up, I've got the same the risk area, the questions. I've got a little drop down with pretty colors, right? Because we like red and green. We all understand that stoplight protocol. I give the folks a chance to explain their answer. And then most importantly, and this is where I would expect you to take this and make it your own, right? Add information here. How can you teach them to do what they need to do? It's not your job to secure their web applications, but if you ask them, hey guys, have you ever heard of OWASP? No? Well, let me tell you about OWASP. They have all these cool free tools like ZAP, Z-Attack Proxy. It's a free web application security scanner. If they tell you we're not scanning our web applications for vulnerabilities, and you show them ZAP, they can put that in the hands of their developer, and the next time you talk to them, they'll be able to say, you know what, we took a look. We found SQL injection. We found cross-site scripting. So I've got all that guidance, or just point them to sectools.org. SecTools is great. It's a lot to consume. It's 125, so for the non-tech, it might be frustrating, but it's got everything they need. But just some guidance there, and if they go through the process and answer all the questions, they get a pretty picture, right? The pretty picture says, how secure am I? And for that small business owner who says, I want to know if I am doing enough to do business with this company, if they've got any red here, the answer is automatically no. And once they take care of all the red and they get all the green, right, and then they say, okay, I'm happy, I've got 100%, I've got a perfect score, I'm 100% secure. No, now we're ready to talk about quality. Now we're ready to make sure you've got the foundation, right? This is just the building blocks that we're going to start building on top of to make sure that the bad things don't happen, or that we react quickly and contain that when they do. And you can also, if you have to write a report, you can copy paste, and then that graphic makes your report look really pretty. Right. Resources you can go to for more information. CommonSenseFramework.org has a copy of the PowerPoint. Adrian's video of the Bsides Columbus is up there. I've got a link out to his site. Information Security Simplified was my first effort at this. I did a series of articles for a website in Columbus that I tried to translate the ISO 27002 set to a small set of 12 articles for small business owners. It was still too much, but I keep the articles archived out there. Slandail.net is where I blog about geeky things. And then IT Security Career is a site I'm still trying to figure out how to build out. I'm trying to teach people how to do security. I'm trying to give them resources to help them get started so we can fill that knowledge gap. So that's another resource you might tap into. On the last two slides, I've got some other resources, but again, you go out to Common Sense Framework, you can download the presentation, it just points you out to some of the tools I use. That's the end of my rant. Are there any questions? Yes?
Yeah, I'm curious, how, even anecdotally, how have people been standing up on the percentages when you rate them on your framework?
How what, sorry?
How have the third-party group that you looked at stand up generally on
Like end customers?
Yeah.
The crazy thing is that I just made a job change. So I was in consulting, and now I'm in higher ed, which is funny to hear some of the comments upstairs. I have not got my new boss to pick up on this yet. So I've not had a chance to use it personally. I've got a guy that if you want to give me like contact info, I can put you in touch with him, and you can see how they're doing it. But that's, got it. And we have food. So folks, I'm going to be around for a couple of hours before I head back to Columbus. Highly recommend you check it out. If you have questions, please grab me in the next couple of hours. Love to talk about it. Thank you very much for your time.